Troy, how you been? You had a good week?
Good, Uncle Leon. Thanks for agreeing to do this podcast with me 3 weeks in a row. You rip a legend.
It's almost like it's an enjoyable experience.
Almost.
We're getting there. Thank you to everybody who has been listening, subscribing, commenting, suggesting topics for this. It's nice to know that we're not screaming into the void. Even if we were screaming into the void, we'd probably just do it because, mate, it's nice to catch up and talk about things that we like.
That's
right. What
did
you get up to this week?
It was busy, man. It was a busy week. I think I said last week I had 4 gigs and then a recording session all day Sunday. That was from like Thursday to Sunday. So, it's not that bad. It's just having children makes things a lot more difficult.
Yeah, they want attention and care and nourishment and all these kind of things that, otherwise you could devote to gear.
Oh, man, when I think about the time I spent by myself pre-children, just hanging out at the studio, playing with guitars, getting home whenever I felt like it. Oh, I'm going to go away for some gigs. No worries. No big deal. I'll be away for a couple of days. See you later, Amy. It's all different now. Got to book things in advance. Got to be home at a regular hour. It's a different story, man.
Well, that's the saying that every new parent says. They say, yeah, you're not the most important person in your life.
That's about right. But I had music class with my son on Saturday, so that was fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah, he's getting amongst it. We're because his favorite bands are like Ghost and Metallica, which is really funny.
That's amazing. That's hey, good taste.
It's both food groups.
Both food groups of heavy and metal.
I did show him Megadeth. He didn't care for it, so that's
he'll come around.
Yeah, he'll come around. There's some stuff you got to grow into.
Actually, that's before we get any further into what we're going to talk about. Did you see Marty Friedman, Budokan, Megadeth? They did that gig on the weekend.
Really? No, I didn't say that.
Yeah, he joined them on stage for a bunch of songs. So,
oh wow, that's awesome.
I'm sure people listening to this are probably already aware of that, but. Yeah, I mean, Marty playing Tornado of Souls better than ever. Just
that's
dominating.
Nice. Did you watch it or listen to it? Was it
I've seen a few little phone clips of it. I think, it's like the Zach Pantera thing, Of course it's going to be amazing because they're amazing players, but it's just kind of cool to see Marty, Marty's still got the hair. He's still keeping the dream alive,
Yeah.
and the playing has kept up with it as well. So
do you remember
it just looked like it never stopped.
Do you remember 2 or 3 years ago, one of the best moments of my life was I checked Instagram and Marty Friedman was following me. I was like, what? What has happened? And then immediately unfollowed me. So I don't know if he was doing that thing where you just go and get your follow count up. I was like, oh, it was really exciting for a hot second there.
What do they call that? What do they call that? That's not being a simp, is it?
No,
that's a different cultural realm.
I think it's a very different cultural realm. That's yeah. I don't know. That's a bit out of my wheelhouse, Uncle Leon.
Maybe Marty saw your glorious locks of hair and thought, I'll have some of that, and then was like, this guy doesn't post much. What am I doing this for?
He's still so curly. I mean, Dave's got the hair still too. I mean, it's like Megadeth. Just they've been in a vortex in the hyperbaric chamber from Dragon Ball Z.
Is it the hyperbaric or the hyperbolic?
Wait.
Because I thought in Dragon Ball Z time runs.
Oh, maybe it's hyperbolic.
Time runs at a different rate, so you can go in there for what seems like an hour of normal person time.
Yep.
But it's a month there, so you can come out. They come out super jacked. And what's the big takeaway? They figure out how to.
Like Goten and Trunks do the fusion dance, don't they?
Yeah. But I think when they're preparing to fight the androids, they use it a lot. And the big takeaway is that rather than power up into rather than have a bit of a punch on, then power up into Super Saiyan, that uses a lot of your energy. So they find a way to just stay Super Saiyan, which to the average person is like they have yellow hair instead of black hair now. But it's a bit like warming up versus not warming up at a gig, which I don't do.
No,
it's always like the third last song is where you finally get to go Super Saiyan because you spent the other time just warming up.
It's like that with me in singing, but it takes me it actually takes me a day to warm up. And so if I have because last week I had 4 gigs, and the week before that was 3 gigs. So I felt like my 3 gigs the week before was my warm up for the 4 gigs this weekend, because I still kind of had a bit of carryover from like the previous Saturday night up until the Thursday. So that was good, but I got a little gassed. But that was actually probably a fold back thing, because
Yeah, interesting.
yeah, we were talking a little bit about in-ears last week, and I'll put a quick pause on that because I need to tell you, like, I've been watching so many Dragon Ball Z clips on YouTube recently.
Have you watched Team 4-Star?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's basically just condensed episodes.
Oh,
and they've redone the voices. They're amazing.
All right.
They're amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
But redone the voices, I don't know about that. Is it good?
It's good.
Okay.
It's good. You'll really enjoy it. And they've made some of the jokes a lot more adult. So
Is that just on YouTube?
Is this on YouTube? Team 4-Star.
I'll watch that. That sounds awesome.
You can watch you can watch the whole thing in a day, and yeah, it's pretty good. I got sucked down that rabbit hole.
Do you remember how much those episodes dragged? I used to tape it before school because I couldn't watch TV.
I used to do the same thing because I'd have to leave. For any Aussies out there, Cheese TV.
Yep. Man, I had a tape that was because you remember VCRs, you can run them at like half speed to get like twice as much stuff on them.
Really?
Yeah, or like your tapes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could run them at like extra long or something like that. So it's like anything, your quality goes down, but you get way more time. So I think a tape, I could be wrong. It's like maybe you could get like 6 hours out of a tape.
I remember definitely having long tapes. Maybe that's what was going on.
Yeah, but I remember it was yellow. I probably still have it in a box somewhere. But I had this one yellow tape with a bunch of Dragon Ball Z episodes on it. And then, far out, man, probably like in 2001, 2002, trying to download episodes of that show on the internet from somewhere, pre-YouTube, pre-anything. And I got like these 13 megabyte episodes that looked so bad. And
Postage stamp.
And then I was trying to work out how I could burn them onto a DVD so I could watch them on my DVD player, which was... That took about an hour to get one episode on or encoded or something. It was ridiculous. Anyway, that's not related to anything.
The kids these days, they don't know about the struggle.
They don't know about the struggle, man. I mean, goodness me. They don't know about LimeWire and Kazaa and all that sort of stuff. It's just there on a silver platter for you. But in terms of getting back onto topic, because it's only been about 10 minutes of waffling. That's not too bad.
That's very reasonable.
Like, I want to talk a little bit about these gigs that I did because... I said I was doing the in-ears thing. I got those Shure 215s like we talked about last week.
Yep.
And I think I said to you, like, I'd worked out how to make them not crackle. Did I tell you?
Did.
Yeah, and cut them out. And that was by getting isopropyl alcohol and cotton tips and scrubbing them out a bit.
Giving them a little clean.
Yep, lasted 1 gig.
Oh, well, there you go.
So
you're just working up too much of a musk, mate.
It was not fun. To be honest, like, I have used those exact headphones before, and they were cutting in and out so much I had to pull them out and just go with no fold back whatsoever. I managed to get through 3 out of the 4 gigs of all the gigs I did last week. I used it for 3 out of 4 of them, and by the last gig there was just like a few times when I couldn't move my head into a certain position. I couldn't look one way, otherwise it would cut out. But I got through the gig. The bigger issue was just the fact that my head does not keep those like headphones in. So I've got to...
Yeah, that's the big struggle.
So I was going to get new tips, but I was looking at the flange tips, like the hero looking things.
Yep.
But you can't just walk into a shop and get them, which is a real bummer. So I could order them, and if I'd ordered them, they probably would have been here by now. But then they sucked so much at the gig, I'm like, I'll get some new headphones, and I'll just deal with it that way and work out what tips are going to go on those things. But it was really good to use the ears again for the acoustic gigs, like 2 acoustic gigs, or not acoustic, duo gigs, let's say, and then 1 for a full band gig. But I just need to go and like redial in all my patches again on my HX Stomp. That's the big takeaway from this exercise, because it's like, I'm really just bad at dialing clean sounds. I don't know if you find that coming from like rock and roll, but I find on modelers in particular, it's like really tough to work out what a clean sound should be. It's always too like plicky plocky, like, just sharp. And
it's either too plinky, or it's just too dirty.
Yeah.
You dig in a little bit, you're like, it's not clean. So you end up having to play really softly and delicately. And
it's really strange, man, like, because it works for so many people. There's like so many great guitar players that love the HX Stomp for one example, right? when I was at my gig on Saturday night, I was just getting, because I got this deluxe sound that I had dialed in, and I was kind of okay with it, but then having it pumped directly into my ears, I was like, man, this thing is so sharp, so harsh. I need to change this up. So I got down on the floor, did it the old-fashioned way, turned some actual knobs to get up like a different sound, and I sort of settled on a AC30 or AC15 or something like that, which was kind of not too bad. But still, like, talking about it being too dirty, the default preset was like so dirty. And it was kind of like that on all of them. So I don't know if I'm just doing something wrong, but man, it was really, it was a real pain in the ass. But yeah, have you played with the clean sounds much in the HX? Like, because I know you've got one, right?
A little bit, yeah. There's the... I actually did a video with it that will come out this week.
Oh.
Not about clean amps or anything, just about delay, because it's a great delay machine. What's it called? There's a litigator, maybe? Is that the Dumble style thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a few. I found the toughest thing is finding an IR that works really well for clean stuff, that's not too plinky plonky or too like boomy sounding.
Do you mean in that or just in general?
Just in general. I think that's a large part of the battle. What I found works really, really well, and it is Cheeseball 3000, but it's just essentially just not using an amp model.
Right.
Like that kind of Rockman style. It doesn't sound real, but it can be effective for some things. It's almost like it basically just sounds like a crap acoustic guitar. But acoustic guitars plugged in often sound crap anyway. So
do you know what's funny is, like, I do think that is a sound I need to get under my fingertips a little bit more. I know someone that's how they gig, like electric guitars straight into a one of the column PAs, like a Bose, whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
And it sounds fine, I would probably... So when you do that sort of thing, or if you do that sort of thing, do you like use chorus or compression or anything as well? Like, how do you like to run it?
Yeah, lots, heaps of compression. I think it's because I've got a video on there, but it's I did New Year's like that, right?
Oh, right.
That was that sound that.
Oh yeah, the one that we did. Yeah, that New Year's gig.
Yeah. Which was fine because you were also playing guitar. I think on its own, it's a little bit how's it going?
Yeah.
But you just have to. I guess the kind of, and it's basically like the Rockman circuit is like it takes out a whole bunch of low end and it pumps up the highs so you don't make the compressor pump too much.
Oh, I see.
With your DI signal, and then a bit of chorus, and it's a thing.
What compressor did you use in the? Because it was in the FM3, hey?
Yeah, there's one called the Studio Feedback compressor, which I was using, but they updated the compressors again, and I'm just using whatever the stock studio style comp is now. It sounds really, really good.
When you're talking about taking the low end out, is that like sidechain filter sort of thing?
No, literally just using a tilt EQ before the compressor. So
right.
Yeah, just like a low shelf and a high shelf. And I did that because I measured my Rockman headphone amp, and I was looking at the spectrogram, and I was like, that's a tilt EQ. That's like all it's doing.
Right.
And I think I did like use Pro Q3 or something. It's like, this is a tilt EQ, which was pretty interesting. So yeah, that definitely works. But trying to find, a really good clean IR is a bit of a struggle. I've got that EV IR that, I had a friend who had a boogie with EVs in it. So I shot that, and that's pretty cool, which I really, really like. And it's very smooth and kind of dark sounding.
Right.
Which isn't bad because you got to play it really, really loud.
Yep.
I find you probably almost get more of that Fletcher Munson thing on the clean sounds because they're so dynamic.
Yep.
You can really, really... So yeah, I don't know, just use heaps of compression. You actually probably don't want it to be that dynamic. When you're playing a really, really loud clean amp, the peaks and troughs probably aren't as extreme as, I don't know. That's actually an interesting experiment. Would it be as extreme? If the amp model is accurate, it should be. But yeah,
it's just
I don't know, it's tough.
Look, I think I started to talk about this, or maybe talked about it a little bit last week. But I'm trying to sit and play with amps in the room a bit more because I just didn't do that for so many years. And it's the one thing I really noticed is like you have. I had your Fender Deluxe sitting next to me for 6 months or a year, probably about 6 months. And I played it all the time, and it was so easy to get the sound that I liked. And I don't think it was the knobs as much as it was the way that there was just like air pushing, and I was able to hear it from a distance and feel it from a distance.
Yeah, and you've got, I guess the other thing as well is you do have that acoustic reinforcement that happens when you're in the room
Yep.
with your guitar and the air moving. That coupling effect, which you may not get, especially with in-ears. So
Yeah.
you might lose a little bit of sustain and all that good stuff that people like.
That's the hard thing, isn't it? You know, like the sustain. I feel like until I, played with some of these amps, like Fender, even like loud, breaking up a tiny bit. It's like, oh, okay, I don't need distortion to get it to like just to hold on and to give me that size. Like you can hit a power chord and it just doesn't like fall away in 3 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just so it's so stupid. I feel really stupid talking about this stuff because I should know this by now. Do you know what I mean? But then you go, if you skip like a few levels and you go like, I like shred metal and like distorted sounds, and then you go to like recording, and then
if you go from Racer X to doing solo acoustic gigs,
yeah,
you might not have a handle on you getting your Mayer on.
Yeah, exactly, man. And it's a true thing. Like playing clean for me at least, play clean chords on an electric guitar, or chords on an electric guitar through a clean amp, so like that. It's been a struggle. It's just like, is this good? Is this bad? Yeah, go on.
Do you remember, Uncle Tondi, in the American summer of 2015 when you came to the States with us again?
Yep.
A glutton for punishment you are. Like the day before kind of the tour started, when we went out with Sam, and we ended up at a bar.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there was kind of like a hip hop band playing.
Yep.
But do you remember the guitar player?
I remember he was really good.
He was playing a green Strat and a wah and like a Fender Deluxe, but it was just like, it was the coolest, clean guitar sound thing I think I'd witnessed in a long time. He was very, very good. I have no idea who the band was.
Yep.
But, it was mostly kind of like a, hip hop with a live band. But he's just doing some wicked stuff. That, in my brain, the way I remember that is kind of like, yeah, that's what you have to do to get a really convincing, great, clean guitar sound that works.
Yep.
Which is probably just like a Fender into a Fender, and playing some extended chords.
I think I also need to really reassess the way that I strum the guitar for that situation, because I think I've spent so long where the main time I would play guitar was acoustic guitar, and my feel for that and technique for that I'm really happy with.
Yeah, because you're also the guitar player and the drummer, basically.
Well, yeah, that's right.
You've got to bring that that kind of time thing. You got to be really, really solid, versus maybe the clean guitar thing, you can be a little less like phase locked. Yeah,
but do you know what's also funny is like, I approach a acoustic gig in the idea of like, I have to make as much sound as possible at all times, because all I am is that. And then if I do that on electric guitar, okay, one really clear example of this is everything I do tends to be below the 5th fret because it's big open chords. And then it's like, if you do that in some of the like cleaner stuff, it just sounds so boomy and so like yuck. And it's like, oh, that's right, I can play these chords up the octave if it's like a funkier sort of thing, or a clean, right. And it's like, oh, great. All of a sudden my F sharp minor 7 chords sound kind of good because it doesn't have the boom factor.
Yeah.
And when it's got enough bottom end in it as well, it just carries and sustains. It just... I said, it's so stupid. It's like level 1 guitar stuff. And I'm just trying to understand it now at 35 after a long time of playing guitar. It's really fun.
How much do you...
So I was going to say, I just realized it's 30 years, my 30-year anniversary of playing guitar this year. I started in 1993, so there you go.
There you go. Congratulations, mate.
Thanks, mate. So what
you survived it all.
I did.
You survived the 90s and the noughts.
Yep, I sure did.
How much... And I know this is the inevitable segue. How much do you think speaker choice plays into these sounds and the sounds that we know and love? And would us 10 years ago dialing in sounds for an album with, like a vintage 30 and a high gain amp, you're just kind of like neglecting 50% of the tonal spectrum there with your speaker choice or even cabinet choice, with what you're struggling with now? Because I know you've been playing a lot with speakers and buying a lot of speaker cabs.
Yep.
I think this needs to be the speaker episode where we totally nerd out, and maybe maybe tell me some of the things you've been feeling and discovering, and I'll try to chip in and share some of my experiences, which is somewhat more limited, but
Well,
nevertheless.
I'll kick off with two observations, right? One, T75s, I like them a lot. And the hatred that they receive, I don't really understand. So that's...
I also, like, my main gigging cab was a T75.
I know it
cab
was.
forever. And it was fine.
It's just like, we say this phrase to each other, like, it sounds like guitar.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what that cabinet is. It's like not really a fancy sound. It just gives you, it's got like a nice growl to it. It's clear. It has bottom end. It's just like a normal guitar sound. I think where I don't like it is, for example, where I teach at TAFE, they have a JCM 900 cab and a JCM 900 head. And I think that head through that cab is not the best combination, like just because the head's so bright.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like the DSLs in particular are really voiced for those 75 watt speaker cabs. Like a DSL through a T75 cab really, really works.
Yeah, it's got a nice growl to it and like a nice punch as well. So the 900 I don't think is, or at least in my experience, I don't like it as much. But yeah, the DSLs, I think that works really well. But like with all the cabs that you have, because how many cabs have you got? Like I think I ask you that all the time. I always forget.
This is a good question. So
man, okay, like you have a literal stack of 4x12s. Like when I first came to your place, I remember there was like just so many. I was like, why does Leon have so many amps? But I know the reason why.
Because Leon's dad has so many amps. That's why.
Exactly.
Pure nepotism.
Bill just
that's why.
Yeah, because Bill just kept buying amps. Like
so my dad used to gig he said when he started out, gigging, what he would do with his gig money was just put it in a bag. Put the cash away, and then he was like, "Oh, I want to buy an amp." yeah, just like in the cartoons.
Yeah,
he put it in the dollar sign bag, and he was sort of like, just putting the cash aside, doing it because loved playing music, and it was sort of like, I got all this kind of gig money sitting around. What I'll do is I'll just I'll open the gear catalog and see what I can buy with it. A JCM 800 full stack with a matching cabinet. So that was what he used to gig for a long time.
Yep.
Was and that's still here, like a straight 4x12 and the slanted 4x12. They say, JCM 800 lead series on them. He had the 2210 head, which has the split channels on it. So very different vibe to a classic 2203
and those
style thing.
That's a later 80s.
Yeah, this is a late 80s thing,
so
which would have been around
T75s.
the time he bought it. They're still T75s from the late 80s. Then I remember when I kind of started playing guitar, he swooped on a few good deals locally where it was like maybe like these were the now branded 1960A cabinets, still with T75s in them. I want to say he's got at least two of those, maybe three. And I have hacked one of those up. And at one stage it had 4 different speakers in it. That was sort of like my main gigging cabinet.
Right, that's the one that's downstairs at the moment, right?
Yeah, that's at yours in the studio. So I think it had some WGS speakers in it at one stage.
Yeah, I've moved those to a different cabinet now.
They're, it's all part of the toy library, mate.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. And then there's one cab, which is sort of the main cab that I use now for demoing stuff that has greenbacks in it. And it's a 1960 TV. I think it's like a 90s reissue.
Yep.
So yeah, and then I never really had anything with V30s, so I didn't know why. I feel like it was like the T75 cabs, they were rated at 300 watts, so that's better. But then I remember you had a 1960 BV when I first met you.
Well, I still
and
do,
it was like, what, 280 watts or 240 watts? So obviously not as good as 300.
No, it's like definitely better.
Little did I know that it fundamentally sounds very, very different.
Yeah, what's the guy? The Cola Keller? Is that the dude?
Christian Cole. Yeah.
I've watched some of his videos where he really rips on the T75s and how much he hates them. And I think for that sort of music, I understand it.
Definitely. His kind of signature sound is very much not the kind of thing I have any experience with. It's not a classic rock sound. It's an intense, grindy thing. And that style of music also really relies on a very particular bass guitar sound.
Yeah. And so
which has a lot of distortion on the bass. So, you're kind of like, you need a kind of final filter that leaves room for that.
Yeah, and that clearly isn't the right speaker for that. But yeah, the V30s, like I understand in that situation, it's like a V30 and the sensation I get when I play it and I record it, it's just very kind of clear and very clear in the mid-range. And I think it's just like, in terms of sitting in front of like each of those cabs, there's just something about a V30 that it's like, it's almost too clear and too bright for me, which is weird because like that isn't really the situation to get when it's mic'd up. And I'd got to mic these T75s up more and play with them in that respect.
Yeah, because my experience with T75s is I haven't had a lot of luck micing them and recording them. Whereas they sound great in a cab in the room, and then it's sort of hard to capture that with a microphone. Whereas V30s, it's almost like V30s are too bright on their own, but then your mic choice compensates for that.
Well, maybe, but then the classic combination of an SM57 is like, that's a bright mic.
G'day, kids. We'd like you to learn about 4K. That's just
it's
big.
It's funny, man. Like, so I have the 4x12 V30 cab. That's like an early mid-2000s one. And then I've got an orange 1x12 with I think that's one of the Chinese V30s in it. And then I'm also borrowing an orange 2x12 open back cab off friend of the channel, Jay. And I borrowed that last week because I thought, all right, I think I'm jumping a few steps here, but like I'm trying to find, part of the reason I got the Synergy, right? The Synergy Syn 30 was I want a small gigging solution, and I already had this orange cab, but it just sounds kind of crappy. Like the combination, I can't get a sound out of the Syn head and the V30 cab that really does it for me.
That works, yeah, right.
So anyway, partly it feels too claustrophobic. It's the best way I can describe it. And, Jay has this 2x12 he's not using. He needs a smaller cab, so we just did a little borrow swapskis. And so I tried this this 2x12 open back cab, also thinking like maybe the claustrophobia that I'm feeling is, if it's going to be a smaller cab, maybe being open back to open it up a little bit, maybe that'll make a difference. But I still find like playing it in the room, there's just like a softness to the attack that I don't really like. And it's a bit squishy, or maybe it's a bit squishy in the bottom end or something. And I don't really get that sensation when I mic them, but just playing it, I don't know, it really is unsatisfying. And I've said to you before, like, my Splon Nitro, which I love the sound of that amp, but it sounds awful through vintage 30s. It's really dark and boomy sounding. If I run it through greenbacks, it sounds awesome, but just cannot make it work with vintage 30s. So I'm going through a bit of a like, I hate vintage 30s phase right at this second.
Yeah.
I've been saying that.
But I mean, I've seen people hate on vintage 30s, but more so I'm hating on it because it's popular.
Right.
Like the ultimate edgelord position, like everyone likes this, so they must be wrong.
Well, to bring it to how we got off onto this topic, talking about IRs, when I was using the AX8 for all my gigs, pretty much every time I would set up a guitar sound, it would be through some form of vintage 30. So I've got the York Audio vintage 30 pack. I think the Mesa Boogie ones maybe they released a long time ago, 6-7 years
ago. Yep.
And I was using those, and certainly I put them on, and it gives me a character that I had gigged with my 4x12 vintage 30 before and recorded it a lot. So that's the speaker for me. And I didn't really experiment with too many others. And when I did, I sort of came to the conclusion like, oh, that's too bright and that's too this and that and the other. And I was like, no, it must be the vintage 30 cab. That's the thing that I like. And everyone's raving about these IRs, so that must be the best one. And then I got some good tones out of it, but I also struggled to make a lot of amps in the Fractal work for me because...
because you're feeding it all through the same cab.
Yeah, exactly. And, they'll always sound different, certainly. But I wonder now if I go back and experiment with some different IR choices, if I, find some different experiences with some of these amps. I try and compare all this stuff to things that I've experienced in the past, like playing amps and stuff. And when I'm trying to dial in like an AC30, the AC30s I work with, I've got a head, and so that's always running into a cabinet in a different room, so I never get to hear what that's like in the room.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard it obviously, but most of the time that's my experience with it. And the same as like the Fenders and stuff. So I don't have the same like catalog in my brain of how things are supposed to sound with those amps, so I really struggle to make it work. So maybe like I brought up some of the stock cabs in the Fractal to work with those things, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of okay, I think this is good, but I just feel very unconfident. Is that a word? Incompetent and unconfident.
Yeah.
About if what I'm doing actually sounds good. And it's so silly. It's like, if it sounds good, it is good. That's the key.
But it's hard to, it's also the psychology of, well, maybe I'm doing this the hard way.
Yeah. It's really silly, man. Like, I mean, these are the constant battles. I mean, this is the reason why I'm buying so many cabs at the moment. I mean, partly it's relatively inexpensive, and I've had some stupidly good deals. But this is my the journey of learning that I'm on right at this second.
Yeah, which just involves buying a lot of gear. It's interesting because I'm
trying a lot of gear, at least. Yeah,
trying a lot of gear. Yeah, I'm looking at the Celestion website at the G12 T75, and the way it's marketed is the 12-inch rock guitar speaker.
Yep.
The Vintage 30 is the 12-inch guitar speaker with complex overtones, and the Greenback is also a 12-inch rock guitar speaker.
Yep.
So it's looking at, they publish the 8-ohm frequency response on there for these speakers.
Yep.
The T75 kind of looks like a high-powered Greenback.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
There's this thing from about 2 to 4K with this like big bump, and the frequency response is a lot smoother than the V30, which once you get up above, it's like in your extended like 10K range, there's a bunch of little spikes, and the V30 is a little flatter. And I mean, look, they're probably the three speakers I have the most experience with in the Celestion lineup. I've never really tried a Creamback or like a Redback or any of these other like kind of cool speakers.
The Creambacks are cool, man. Like I've got one of each. Like I've got an H and an M. So the M I put in one of my Greenback cabs, and probably about 12 months ago. And I used that for a bunch of recording, and it was awesome. Like, and also because they're in the same cab, the Greenback and the Creamback, I would just mic both up and run the same amp through.
Yeah, that's cool. Because what do Friedman do? They do a split.
I think it's a V30 Greenback.
V30 Greenback, and then Bogner does a T75 V30.
I think so, yeah.
That's the Uber cab. I'm always kind of interested to see that like mixed speaker. And, whether you do an X pattern or you stack them side by side or on top, obviously if you're going for like the sound in the room. I had a Boogie 212 for a while.
That's right.
And I ended up with a V30 and a T75 in that, which I thought they actually complemented one another pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you just get that little extra bite, I suppose, from the T75. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was going to try. Actually, unfortunately, with the orange cab, it's a 16-ohm cab with 212s. So there must be 8-ohm speakers. Because I do have a bunch of T75s that I could chuck in there. I might actually replace both those speakers just to hear it and see if the T75s work for me, because I suspect I'll actually like it quite a lot. Just that presence. It's that clack and that immediacy that, I don't know if I'm just full of shit, but I don't seem to have the same joy when I do it with V30s, at least standing next to the cabinet.
I wonder if you could probably measure the differences in transient response, and that will come down to like the construction and the differences in materials that they use.
Yeah, but it could be the cab too, I suppose. So that's a hard thing.
I'm sure that's not negligible. If anybody listening has any great suggestions of speaker resources to check out, I should mention as well, I traded some gear a while ago for a pre-roller Greenback.
Oh, that's right.
And I've got it in my main Greenback cab, and it sounds nothing like a modern Greenback. I should probably pull that out and go and take it somewhere and get it serviced and looked at and cleaned up, because it's a kind of valuable piece of gear now. But everything you play through it sounds like Van Halen.
It's very bright, hey?
Very, very bright. Nowhere near as much kind of bottom end ka-chung.
Yep.
Man. But it's the sound of an era, man. It's like you plug a Mark Series Boogie into it and you're like, classic rock. Sounds like Van Halen. Cool.
I don't know if I told you, but I missed out on a pair of Blackbacks last week.
Really?
Yeah.
Another classic speaker.
$190 for the pair.
Oh,
Yeah, I was driving back from Cal and it was on Marketplace. I sent the guy a message, but by the time I got back to Perth, he'd already sold them. So
it had been snaffled.
but I was talking to him. I got in time, but clearly someone else. So I bet it was be one of the like other 3 guys in Perth that's into this stuff. You know,
they know who they are if they're listening to this. See, then there's other fun stuff like the Celestion Classic Lead 80, which has its own kind of cult following, and what's the 60-watt one?
The 65.
Yeah, the 65.
So that
I've always
was,
wanted to try a G12 65.
They were in the early 800 cabs, I believe.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, I was hoping on, well, not hoping, but the T75s I got, for when I bought the 2, my 800, 900 cab, I thought maybe I might get lucky and they'd be the 65s. I think they're supposed to be a little smoother sounding, but yeah, obviously I've never played them. And the Classic Lead 82, it was Zilla Cabs. I watch their videos a lot because they've got the
great channel.
It's the most comprehensive. Them and Johan Segerborn, is that how you say his name?
Yep.
Like those 2.
Definite friends of the podcast.
Yeah. But the resources that they have on their channels, like you can just compare everything. For vintage, like greenbacks and stuff, I mean, that's where you go to the Johan channel and check it out. For anything a little bit more, maybe I wouldn't say scientific, but at least running the same loops through everything, then the Zilla Cabs one's really good. Yeah, but I found the Classic Lead 80 was like really, really smooth. Like
apparently it's got a fiberglass coil, or is that right? What does it say? Tell me, Celestion website. And, we haven't even talked about the Celestion Blue, which is its own universe of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
like, arguably one of, like, it's so important to a particular sound, right?
Yeah, well, any Alnico speaker that's a different world that I really don't understand. I'd like to try some of the Neos speakers as well, because they're super light.
Yeah.
And they do like a creamback one of those now, and I'm just kind of curious. So the
Classic Lead 80 has a fiberglass voice coil developed in the late 70s. So, that's kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, I can't remember if you came down to it. It was at Super Freak Studios, and it was kind of one of those gear days, and it was with Johnny C. Anarchy Audio Pedals, shout out Johnny C, local legend. There's a lot of the Perth gear community. Wait,
was it at there or the one in Malaga?
No, it was at Super Freak. Maybe it wasn't a gear day. Maybe he was just down there, but they had 3 AC30s there.
Oh, okay.
One was a new one that had Celestion Blues in it, and it sounded like an AC30. There was like a slightly older one, but still a modern one with greenbacks that sounded really cool. And then there was a 70s one with 70s fanes. That was ridiculous. It weighed about 17 tons, but it was, man, it had the coolest sound. Like, it still had that AC30 chimey thing, but it's really aggressive.
I'm fanging to try some fanes. I really want. Do you know what? I think I saw one for sale. Not that like in the last couple of weeks, but it wasn't. I want to try the one that Fryette uses, or at least that model. I think he's got his own sort of thing, the one that he has. But I'm really curious because I couldn't really find why he chose that speaker over the like Celestions or anything in his cabs, apart from the fact that I think they were in a lot of the old Hiwatts or the Sound Cities and something. I know he's kind of
because I know Steve now is he making Sound City stuff, or he owns the rights to it?
Don't know how it works, but they've got their own thing going on, like it's a cool
Big
sound. They're just really hard to come by. Did you get that link I sent you, by the way, the Silverface that had the EVs in it?
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
Yeah,
like the old EVs.
Yeah,
and then EVs are their own thing as well,
Yeah. So like, I was gonna say like something that I'm planning to do over the next few months, because here's the thing: I've got all this stuff. That's cool. I have to work out what it means, because at the moment it's a semi-meaningless thing, and I just have stuff because having stuff is cool. I have a spreadsheet, and I have all of my amps and all my mics and all my cabinets listed on this spreadsheet, and I'm going to work out one at a time what sounds best with each thing, because I'm really genuinely curious, because I need to know this. This is like where I can probably get away, or I have got away with using one vintage 30, the one that I like the most in my straight cab. I've pretty much used that for the last 15 years, and it sounded really great, but I need to know more.
Yeah.
Like that's where I'm at.
You want to tweak the recipe a little bit and see if you can optimize it.
And I've got a question for you as well. Before I say that, do you know what actually put me onto this track originally? I probably told you this, but like I had a guy bring a Diesel VH4 into the studio a couple of years ago.
That's right. Yep.
And then there's probably only one or two of them in Perth as far as I'm aware. They're really hard to come by and obviously super expensive because I think the retail on them here was like $8,000 Australian.
Yeah.
But he brought his Diesel up and he also brought a Randall Warhead cab. And I was like,
interesting. What was in that?
I think V30s, like, but it's an oversized cab.
There you go.
It's oversized cab V30s. I'm like, okay. So he brings it up and I'm like, well, it says Randall on it and it's a Warhead cab. It's probably shit. Like, because I'm stupid. That was my thought. So mic'd my cab up, like, you know, ran it through there, ran his thing up and he was playing. He's like, man, it doesn't really sound like the tone I'm used to. I'm like, okay. His cab, we had already dragged it up the stairs. So I just plugged in, put a mic on it and it was like, okay, this is the thing. And what in that situation, I guess it wasn't even the speaker so much. It was the cabinet and the way the cabinet interacted with the speaker and that being an oversized cabinet. And I was like, man, okay, there's so much here that I've been ignoring or haven't understood. And I need to work this out. You know what I mean?
See, do you find when you're producing and engineering, obviously people a lot of the time would be coming to you because they're like, I've heard stuff that you've done and I like the way it sounds. So you're like, all right, idiot, you're going to come in and you're going to use, you bring your rig in, but we're not going to plug it in because we're going to use my stuff because then that's really what you want. And you kind of, I imagine I'm not saying you do this, but it's like, there's the element of like, well, there's the easy way to do this and the hard way. But sometimes people actually know what they're doing, you know, and their rigs are dialed in and you use their rig and you're like, oh, there's the sound they want.
It's kind of not 100%. It's hard to put a percentage on it. There's probably fewer times where people come in and say, I have my sound and I need to capture my sound. It's more a case of like, here's what the song is and we need to get a guitar sound that works for the song. And I'm happy to try whatever you got.
That's
you
cool.
know, that's, there's been a few exceptions to that. But that's why I've got so much stuff. And at the very least, I've got stuff whereby if they bring in like, you know, no disrespect, but like a Marshall Valve State 2000 and an Epiphone SG, it might sound great. It's probably not going to be the best sound or the most appropriate for the recording. So I've got stuff that can help out. You know, not the first really nice amp that I bought, but I bought my 70s Marshall because I'm like, well, that's a classic sound. At the very least, I probably should have something like that.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of part of the service you have to provide when you're running a studio, which is like, hey, we've kind of got all the major food groups of amps and guitars and speakers and preamps and, you know, outboard gear. Well, there's stuff you kind of have to have.
Kind of. I mean, like, to be honest, we could talk about like the Tonex thing again if you want, because I've had some really good success. I've been messing with that the last week. So in a way, I could very easily just run it through that, or like a Kemper or something, and probably get a very usable sound. I just prefer using actual amps when I've got people in, because to me it's more like, if you just use a profile, it's someone else's stuff, like it's someone else's thing, it's someone else's idea of a guitar sound. I'd rather craft something and know that the effort's gone to it and it's a little bit more unique and individual, even though that doesn't mean that much really. Maybe that's just an ego thing on my behalf.
Sometimes the process is important.
Yeah. Like, part of getting all this stuff too and trying so much stuff out is, you know, now that I understand how much the speakers and the cabinets really make a difference, and you know, maybe I was being a bit too naive before and just using the same stuff, but like, there are times when I'm spending a lot of energy just with so much EQ to get something to fit. And I think partly that's because, like, the V30, it's a good sound. It's like a really good solid sound, but sometimes I get overtaken and overjoyed by the sound of the amp in isolation.
Yeah. It's like
or I trick myself and I'll put it in the mix and I'm like, oh, it actually sounds really good and sounds really great. But then I end up carving so much of the sound out to make it fit. And it's like, if I just it happened like a month ago. I had a session doing a guitar part, and it was like, I think we had a Dr. Z in here.
Interesting.
And ran that. I put up my So it's my JCM 900 cab, which I've re-Tolexed in a pink Tolex, and that was a pain in the ass. I did that last year.
Total Racer X shark show energy.
But it's got a warehouse greenback in it. What is it? Your warehouse greenback, and it's also got the Reaper. So I think it's basically like a greenback and a H30.
So the Reaper, I think, is the WEGS version of the G12H30.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to say, and it's got a really distinctive sound.
It sounds cool too. I really like it. It sounds great with a Splawn. But anyway, had that up, and it was like each of those speakers did not. There was a couple of the speakers in that cabinet, but those two, which I had mic'd up, really didn't work. I just so happened to have my straight cab, which I had changed the one of the V30s out for a creamback. So that's kind of my other really useful cabinet that I have there with my favorite V30 in it already. Mic the creamback, played a chord, that's the sound. You know what I mean? It was like an instantaneous thing of it's working and I don't have to do anything to this sound to make it fit in the mix. And it's a luxury. It's like having all this stuff is a complete luxury.
And you can do it without it, as you've discussed. Like you can kind of sculpt it and carve it.
Absolutely.
And liposuction the guitar tone, but obviously the workflow is probably more pleasant when you start with something that's closer to the end result.
Yeah, and you know what else is important? Because like I've mentioned to you before, and I've said on this thing, I've gone to great lengths to try and put this recording rig together with the amp switches and all this sort of stuff. Because the one thing I really don't have when I record anyone these days is time. And it's because, I'm not cheap to work with, right? I charge like reasonable money to do it. It's not like crazy expensive, but it's not nothing. But a lot of bands that I work with like work on limited budgets and limited schedules. So I don't have the luxury of like, cool, let's book out 3 weeks to record an EP or something like that, or an album or a couple of singles. And I'll just try absolutely everything with you to get the right sort of tone. And, maybe it'll be a day getting guitar sound and then we'll move on. It's like, it just doesn't happen. So I kind of have to I find having a lot of stuff ready to go, if it's cabinets with speakers in it, stuff mic'd up, heads.
And you can go with the first thing that works that way.
Yeah, but you can try it. Like even I did a session on Sunday, like being able to try, and half the rig was in pieces as well, to be honest, because I was in the middle of rewiring it. But being able to try a couple of different speaking combinations, amp combinations, it would take forever. Like, you remember what it was like 10, 15, when did we do the first recording? Like, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And it's like, it's a pain in the ass to like have to unplug your amps at all times, go try different miking positions, drag it out of the cabs. We had time then because we did it, well, we were younger basically.
Yeah, we had a little less going on.
Yeah, even doing Back to Zero, like we were able to just spend like a day messing with the guitar sounds, or 2 days or whatever, try everything out. And it was cool and fun, and I really love it. But that is not the sort of time that I have on most projects these days. It's just a reality of the world we live in. I've got to get home to the children, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, and it's having those kind of set boundaries to work within often means just like, there's so much, and I say this all the time, I sound like a broken record. There's the artistic element of making music, but by the time you're recording something, most of that is done already. You've kind of probably made a lot of the decisions. It's like the craft is where so much of the magic happens. And you can certainly be super artistic with choices you make there, but the important thing is that you have to make choices one way or the other. Choices need to be made. And if there's hey, I've got to be out of here at 5 p.m., so we can spend the entire session dialing in a guitar sound and do no work, or we can spend 45 minutes, an hour dialing in the guitar sound, and then you can do all the work and get it done and make those decisions, then that's also a good, productive way to work.
Yeah.
And, there's probably that like, there's that like bell curve of like, how much time you put in for the reward you get.
Absolutely.
Like you got to put a bit of work in, otherwise it's kind of rubbish. But sometimes you can just start making things worse as well by overthinking it.
Yeah, I've definitely. Well, I usually reserve that for the mixing because that's when I'm by myself and I can beat myself up about how the guitar sounds. Yeah, it's funny. But I guess like I said, I've got all these things now. I'm on this kind of learning journey and there's a few things I need to work out. It's going to take me a little bit of time, and every song that I do is going to be different, but I feel like I need to have a few more things, a little bit more knowledge in my brain that has been missing. I just wish I had more hours in the day to learn this stuff. It's like, and even after doing it for 15, 16, 17 years, however long, I'm still trying to work so much of this stuff out. I was going to say, when you're doing, so you use your IR for a lot of the stuff in the Fractal, right? The LT TV mix. Is that the one?
That's the one.
Yeah. And how did you do that? It's the TV cab Greenback 57?
It's actually, so when I bought an SM7B, I was like, this is meant to be good on guitar cabs. I'll shoot one test IR. So I just put it on like like I've got it marked on the cab. This is the best speaker and this is where to put a mic. So I just did that, shot an IR of it. I was like, that sounds pretty good. And then I borrowed one of your Royers and did the same thing. I just put it like straight in front of the center of the speaker and was like, I'll just quickly capture an IR. It sounds pretty good. And I mean, there's a few variations of this floating around. So I blended those two because Fractal have a program called CabLab where you can create IRs and then blend them. So it's blended in CabLab. And
that just gets the phase and stuff, right? Hey?
Yeah, that adjusts that, makes sure the phase is correct and everything like that. And then when I bought an MD421, I did the same thing. I just shot a single test IR and then I played around. I was like, I should do maybe like see if this blends with the other two that I've got. So I just kind of played around with it until it sounded good, and then exported it and shared it, and lots of people have downloaded that now. And there's a few people who have written to me recently where they're like, I used that IR and recorded an album with it, and I use it live. So that was kind of pretty cool. But I know another one, I remember we did like a little IR session at yours where I think the trick was like analog summing everything.
Oh yeah.
And then taking an IR of that, and it was, it had a slightly different thing going on, but that's still something that I really like the sound of. But there's that, and then there was, like I said, someone loaned me a Boogie 412 with EVs, which was the heaviest thing ever. And I think I used the SM7 and maybe like the Cascade Fathead that I have.
Oh yeah,
and just kind of
that mic,
yeah, shot a few. I mean, that's a very good sounds like guitar amp. Anytime I demo a combo, that's what I mic it with, because it's kind of you get a bit of the room sound in there, and it's a little softer for the clean amps.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if I've got a program, I mean, okay, well, the HX Stomp, for example, and you can pick the mic when you're using the cabinet. I usually go for a ribbon thing because it does tend to smooth out the top end a little bit. Yeah, you do get a little bit of sogginess from it, but
that's a good way to say it.
Yeah, I'm kind of not too upset with that. But so your those 3 IRs. So outside of that, like if you're dialing up, because you did that, was it the Ecstasy demo that you sort of dialed that in last week?
Yeah.
So would you try different stuff, like different cabinets apart from like maybe those 3 or one of those 3? Or is it kind of just like...
I'd probably start there unless I was... so it kind of depends, right? Like for what I do a lot of the time, it's just like doing demo stuff. I like the consistency of being able to say, hey, even if it's like I'm demoing an amp and I'm using a load box, that's obviously I can say, hey, the IR's in the video description, go and get it. So if you want to replicate this, you can get pretty close. Or if I'm using the cabinet, it's like, hey, I'm using this cab, and then you can probably listen to the Fractal with an IR of that cab, which is going to be, it's going to be in the same wheelhouse at least. So there is that element of it for consistency. And then for live, it's like, it just works. So I just use it all the time. I don't have to go and like drastically redo my live presets. It's like, I don't get too many complaints from sound guys. So it's good.
Yeah. If it sounds good, it is good, right?
Yeah. I've done a few things where I've used that EV IR for lead stuff, where it's worked really, really well because it is so smooth sounding.
Yep.
And I mean, running like a Boogie sound through that, you can actually use the 6600 hertz slider on that amp.
Oh, right.
If you use it with like greenbacks or V30s, you kind of need to just not do that because they've got so much accentuated high end. With the EVs, it's like you can push that slider, and it's a bit of a different thing.
Okay.
It's like it's like where did you hear the thing about like Zach used EVs because they were Jake's old cabs?
I think that was on one of the was it the Fryette podcast or the one of the Tone Talks or something like that. I think,
which is interesting because you run an 800 through something like that. It's not going to sound like an 800 run through T75s.
Yeah,
it's gonna be vastly different. It's almost like the EVs are like they were sort of like the first attempt at FRFRs for guitar. Because they are like the frequency response is a totally different thing.
I wish they weren't so expensive, man. I'm lucky I got my one EV for a reasonable price, but yeah, like I think they're each like $600-700 Australian. Yeah, it's too much. You can't
big
do a
chunk of money.
412. Like, what is that? Like that plus the cab, you're looking at $3,000 for a freaking like 412 with EVs in it. If you do it yourself.
Yeah, if you do it yourself. And then all the time you have to put in to wire it in and troubleshoot it.
And then all the time you got to put it in the gym to be able to lift it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe it's good motivation. Yeah, I'd still maybe like to get one and put it in my Fender Deluxe, but then it kind of doesn't sound like a Fender Deluxe. So if anybody listening to this has speaker swap suggestions for a Fender Deluxe reissue, the Jensen in it sounds fine.
Do you know what?
I feel like it'd be cool to have something different.
Luke G suggested the V30, actually.
Oh, wow. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Shout out Luke Gallagher, all the way in Nashville.
All the way in Nashville, living the dream.
But he said he did that in his and he really liked it. But I don't... Maybe it works in that amp, man. I don't know. I can't... I like the Jensen that's in it. It was a little bright, but then that goes away when it gets super loud. So
See, Luke's funny because he came around once and was like, I need a hand dialing in like a kind of country guitar sound. And what I heard him play was like the perfect country guitar sound. I was like, you got it, bro. It sounds good. And I was like, P.S., how are you doing that? He's like, on the compressor, you just turn it up to like 9 or 10. I was like, you actually turn it up and use it. And, I was like, compressor on 2, that's a bit much, So,
dude,
it's like
guitar compressors,
that sound.
Like, I can dial in a compressor if I'm mixing a song, no problem. Guitar compressors, for some reason, confuse the shit out of me. It's that thing again of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, or maybe I think what I'm supposed to do from the audio engineering side versus what I'm supposed to do from the guitar side. It's like, I really struggle sometimes to separate those and just like listen. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
So yeah, with last thing actually on the clean thing, and in fact dialing anything in with the digital stuff that really bothers me. It's probably something worth talking about in greater detail at another date. But do you ever find, like, when you're doing your stuff in your studio, just the fact that you're hearing the buzzing of your guitar strings like so clearly affects the way that you actually hear anything coming out of the speakers?
Yes, it's a big thing. It's that like that extended high end you get out of the guitar.
Yeah, I feel like because I like what you do where you put a looper at the start of the chain, like if you're dialing in sounds, like
that works really, really well.
Yeah. But what happens for me is like I'll do that, and I did this specifically in the Fractal, and I was like, sick, I'm getting the sound that I always dreamed of, and then I'd start playing it. I'm like, fucking clang, 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 clang.
Yeah, it's no good.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe I just need to start doing more stuff in headphones just to eliminate that that drive.
I mean, it's a big thing as well with like pitch shifting stuff. People are like, oh my god, this Digitech drop pedal, it sounds so bad. It's like, yeah, because you're listening at less than conversation volume and pitching it down a minor third.
Yep.
So you just have this like, and you're playing an open G chord. So it's like, yeah, it sounds great as like a G major, E major polychord. Of course it sounds garbage. Put some headphones on or turn up. You're going to eliminate that part of it and realize, or even reamp it and realize that, yeah, actually it's pretty good.
Yeah, I was talking about that with someone the other day. The have you tried the one in the HX Stomp, the pitch shifting and the 12 string?
Yeah, it's really, really good because they have the sort of like auto EQ, compensate for the fact that you stretch out the transients and stuff like that when you pitch shift stuff. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I tried to dial in a sweet like 12 string sound, but it was
a bit.
I think I did.
It's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I got a bit excited when yeah, there was one specific night when I got really excited and just loaded so much stuff up on this preset, like the acoustic simulator and the 12 string and then the chorusing and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is so sick, but never used it. It was just,
Yeah, exactly. Then it's just like, I don't need any of this.
yep.
It is, yeah, I've had a few things like that where I think the lesson I learned is like a digital rig, like a normal rig, the less moving parts there are, the better.
Yep.
If I was ever going to gig or like have to do ragdoll shows with amps and pedals again, I'd probably try to use a single channel amp and a delay pedal in the loop and a wah and maybe a boost or something like that.
That's pretty much how I've got my.
I wouldn't have all the extra
man.
stuff. Yeah. It'd just be like, give me the meat and potatoes and delay.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the way I use the Synergy thing is I've got the HX Stomp running 4 cable method, and it's pretty much I've got a compressor in the front for like the real like funky sort of stuff, delay and reverb in the loop, and then that's pretty much it. It's a 3-channel thing, so I'm still trying to work out the balance of how to use that. Actually, what I was going to say, using the Synergy live last week, I used the cab output on the head, like the XLR output.
Oh yeah, how was that?
You know what, Leon? It actually
Totally
sounded
fine.
surprisingly good.
Yep.
I think I've tried it on the Syn 1 and listened to it in the studio, and it was a bit naff, to be honest. But like at a gig in ears, it was actually really good and really usable, I thought.
And easy to set up.
Yeah, well, that was the reason I used it. I didn't have time. I finished one gig at 7:30, and I had to start the next gig at like 8:15 or something. So, and it was a 20-minute drive. So it was literally like burn there as quickly as possible. Thankfully, the rest of the PA was set up. I just had to plug in. I was like, close enough. But no, it was really good. So quite surprised. And I also used the Synergy for my session on Sunday.
Cool.
For the first time. Well, not. Oh yeah. Well, I guess that was the first time I've used it for an actual recording session outside of me just messing around with it. But I tell you what, man, I feel like I'm really just on my knees with this company at the moment. Like, just heads going back and forth, if you know what I'm saying. But it was great. It was, I'd use the my Recto and I'd use my 5150 for some rhythm sounds. I needed something a bit more like with more clarity. So
I'll just swap a module in.
Well, yeah, I just put the head up. In goes the Deliverance module. Mess around with that. I was like, oh, that's the clarity I'm looking for. All right, we need to do another overdub part. You know what might sound kind of cool? The Ecstasy module. Bam, chuck that guy in, dial it in. Is like, that was the sound I needed. Like perfectly, absolutely the sound I needed. Which is
it's
shitty.
nice to know that it actually works in that setting and not in just a kind of, I'm an enthusiast in my home studio who just wants a slightly different tone that I'm probably going to dial in exactly the same way. It's like the thing about using pedals is nice because you can easily swap things in and out and get different textures, but using it that way, actually as a modular system, is pretty cool.
I said it was shitty because now it's my thought a little while ago of like, I just love to have a rack with a couple of these, like the 2-channel things in there and a power amp.
Oh, yeah.
That would be so much better. Maybe that is to come in the future. But those 2 modules, in addition to the amps that I have in the rack, were just the right sounds. Like that for the right, absolutely complemented what else I had.
That's awesome.
Which was really good, man. Like I wasn't like upset that I bought it at any point. Like I knew it was going to work really well for me, but it's been a very good investment so far.
So you kind of feel justified when you can, well, not just you, when like other people can use it to make music with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what,
very, very nice.
Last thing with that amp, man, it is a lot louder than I gave it credit for, like on all channels.
Yeah.
Even doing the gig at, the bar the other night, which it's a big venue, but man, filled out the stage. And I think, as long as it had a bit of reinforcement from PA, it was plenty loud enough. So yeah 30 watts,
awesome.
all you need.
We did a gig. This will be maybe the parting story. We played a private party on Saturday in a backyard, which I haven't done for years. And there were quite a few people I know there who are guitar players. And when we finished the first set, they kind of came up and they were like, you guys didn't even sound check. You just turned the PA on and started playing, which looking back is pretty funny. And it was like, it was a decent sized backyard out in the vines. And, it was one thing we should talk about in the future is like, we keep talking about like game-changing guitar gear, but like what has happened with pro audio in the last 15 years and how that technology is like trickled down to the point where it's like, yeah, you spend $1,000, you get one of these Behringer mixers. It just saves all the presets. You can literally just show up to the gig, plug your stuff in, turn it on. And then if you need to, maybe like just change a few little levels here and there with your iPad, or don't change the levels because you're playing a party where there's like people interested in smoked meats and it's not that important. It's about having a good time.
Yeah, man.
Then it just kind of works.
I gig now with, I've got the model down Behringer mixer that you do. I've got the 16, but I also have the little Flow 8-channel thing. And that's what I do most of my gigs with. And it's awesome. It's just a Bluetooth to control it. And got the presets in there, plus EQ and compression on every channel. And actually what was cool is when I was struggling with the clean sound the other night in the in-ears, it's fully parametric EQ, like on your outputs,
so
like
nice.
on all your aux outputs as well as on the channel. So yeah, just like there was this ringing at 5K and it was just so easy to just chuck that like down a bit. So it's not a problem. And I was done, It's a thing. Life's a lot easier than it was when I started doing this stuff.
Oh, big time. Time. And it's, you can kind of get a bit more granular about really, it frees up a bit of time to maybe chase all the really, really nice, sweet tones that maybe you didn't even have time to think about in the past. So yeah, it might seem excess compared to what you had to do, but it's also kind of fun.
But you know what? It's the one thing that's a bit important, I think, is the amount of pre-work that you do to make the gig easy. I mean, I think you do a lot of that with your sounds. And I said, I talk about me in a recording session and how I'm trying to get all these amps ready and the switches and stuff. It's like, I'm going to put in so many hours of my own time to make it like seamless. And same as like getting the presets for my gigs. It's like, you're rocking up and plugging a PA and sound checking, not sound checking because you've done everything beforehand. I think that's the thing that some people don't connect with in the same way. It's like,
it's not just dumb luck.
I took my Fractal to a gig the very first time I bought it and I couldn't even get sound out of it. Like seriously, because it was an acoustic thing and I didn't, I was like, well, I don't want any of these amp patches. So I'll just pull up something blank and just see what it sounds like. I'll just play through it and use the tuner, but I didn't connect all of the line
through. Yeah, you didn't connect the dots.
Yeah, and it was like literally no sound. It was very, very funny. Thankfully, I took it in addition to the rest of my stuff, but yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, on that note, Troy, maybe we'll put a pin in this one, and to everybody who has subscribed in their podcast app or left a rating or left feedback, mostly on my YouTube channel. I know there's been quite a few people enjoying the podcast. That is awesome. We thank you very much. Feel free to suggest topics for future podcasts. And I'm going to be at the Melbourne Guitar Show this weekend.
Oh, that's right.
In Melbourne with Ragdoll.
When do you leave?
2 shows.
When do you leave?
On Friday.
Friday leaving. When do you get back to Perth?
Tuesday.
Oh, mate. Well, we record podcasts on Tuesdays.
There we go. So we'll do that.
You need to get straight off the plane. You need to say a quick hello to Auntie Speth and then straight into podcast, mate. Or do it from the plane. I'll call you.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You get internet on planes now. We can just do this.
Yep.
Awesome.
Good on your Uncle Leon. Well, you can catch me around Perth doing my thing at Troy Napperby on Instagram.
Living your life day by day,
Yep.
After all.
Awesome, man.
Alrighty, everybody. We will see you for the next episode. Take it easy.
Peace. Bye.